Hello, all. I'm here to talk to you today about something I've been kind of mulling over about maximalism versus minimalism. And you don't often hear the word maximalism, but that's the genre that I create in. It's really just the opposite of minimalism. It's more about how much can you cram into a space versus how little. And I was just thinking about how for most of the history of the Western world, maximalism was the aesthetic. You would think Baroque, Rococo, Victorian, arts and crafts, Art Nouveau, all of that. It was all about maximalism. You wanted to cram as much detail and ornamentation into your space and upon your person in your clothes as possible. And why was this? Why was that a thing? Well, it was really a display of wealth. You wanted to look like you could afford really fancy quality stuff, and back then that meant ornate, decorative stuff. And so that was just like your average middle class parlor was just crammed to the gills with decoration, wallpaper, and ornate furniture and picture frames and art everywhere. And then that began to change, that aesthetic, and only very recently. And why is that? I was thinking about it, and some of it has to do with the Industrial Revolution, beginning of the 19th century. Suddenly we're finding cheaper ways to make these decorative goods, which means they're a little less decorative, or at least they're cheaper looking. They're a little more, they're mass manufactured. When we talk about that in the current day, what we're really saying is that it's cheaper to make things less colorful, more streamlined. So we end up with minimalism as a default. I'm remembering a quote about the Model T. When Henry Ford came out with the Model T in the 1920s, he said, customers can get it any color they want as long as it's black. And we see that with Tesla too. You have to pay extra if you want it to be any color but white. And that's just being cheap. That's what that is. That's just straight up being cheap. So that's a lot of what happened to maximalism, is that it just became a little bit expensive. The other things that happened to maximalism is I was thinking about, with every single jump in technology that we experience, we see a trend toward minimalism emerge at the same time. Like, why is that? And I think a lot of it has to do with stimulation and how our brains react to sudden overstimulation. Like, take the radio. Just the radio. We've only had the radio being a common fixture in your average Western American or American household or European household. We've only had the radio since like the 1920s. And what happened artistically in the 1920s? We start going from like Art Nouveau to Art Deco. And Art Deco, I mean, that's the design, the aesthetic that dominated the 1930s. And it's a lot more straight lines. It's a lot less curvy, ornate stuff. Things become very streamlined. We start talking a lot about speed and efficiency. And that has to do with the rapid march of technology that happened in the 1920s. But also, once you have radio in your house, something you can just turn on whenever and have music, you get a lot more stimulation during your day than you ordinarily would. And granted, it's just audio stimulation, but it's stimulation nonetheless. It pulls focus. And so your houses, your decor becomes a little bit more simplified in response. Not terribly simple. It's still highly decorative. And then we see another jump, technologically speaking, with the television, which starts becoming prevalent in American homes in the 1950s. And it's black and white, so it's still not like, stimulation, the way we would think of stimulation. But that's when we get mid-century modern. We get really much more streamlined in our decor. Things get a lot more minimalistic. And then, well, we do get a nice jump back towards some maximalism in the 1960s because synthetic dyes were invented. And it's like, ooh, let's have some color and get some psychedelic stuff going on. But then color television becomes mainstream in people's homes around the late 60s, early 1970s. And then minimalism starts becoming a much more prevalent aesthetic. Minimalism as we know it. And it really kind of reaches a peak in the 80s and 90s. I feel like it got a lot more minimalistic around here once the internet popped up. So they're in the late 90s. It's like, okay, if you're not doing minimalistic decor, what are you even doing? Are you even rich? And so we have a complete subversion of the way things used to be, where we would show off our wealth with our ornate home decors and fashions, and now it's all about that minimalism and understatement that I think is very much related to how technology has advanced. But really I'm thinking about how this affects the normal everyday people. How we become overstimulated with all these new technological shifts and how quickly they've been happening. And how that means that we have been needing more restful decor, restful fashion in a way, to give our brains a break from all of the stimulation we get from TV and the radio and the internet. And now that the internet comes in our pocket, it's so much worse. So now we really need to be rested up from that overstimulation of our phone. But then an interesting thing happens. Then the pandemic happens. And a lot of people, they're stuck at home, working from home. They see that their house could use some more interesting stuff on the walls while they work. So maximalism makes something of a comeback. Some people call it dopamine decor, and there's dopamine dressing, which, that's kind of funny. I'm late to the party. I just learned about that whole concept like last week. Dopamine decor. And it's just stuff that looks like this, It's just stuff that makes you happy to look at it. Some stuff that's colorful and ornate. And, the way homes used to look back in the 19th century is what a lot of it is. But it also made me wonder if we make our environments more visually stimulating, that would help us to detox from our phones a little bit. Like, it's sort of like this cycle where being overstimulated makes us seek out less stimulation in our environment. But we still need something. So if we want to try, as they call it, a dopamine detox, which isn't really a thing, but, if you want to spend less time on your phone, you're going to have to make your environment more interesting for you. Otherwise, you're going to go through some major withdrawals. You're going to look around your house and be like, wow, my walls are boring. My furniture's boring. Everything's really boring. I'm going to go look at my phone and play some video games, scroll some social media. But I'm just saying, you might need some maximalist art and decor in your house again if you're going to have a successful time weaning yourself off your phone. That's how because you need something. We all do. We are easily bored creatures. So, yeah, I just think that was kind of interesting. I don't know how true that is, because there's a lot of factors that go into these things, you know. There's the economic factor of, you know, what's cheapest to produce, and that happens to be really sleek black smartphones or black cars or white cars or whatever. But then there's also, what can we mentally handle? What do we demand from our environments, from our decor, from our fashion? And we demand, you know, whatever's the opposite of what's going on in the rest of our lives. If we feel understimulated in the rest of our lives, we're going to seek out some more interesting, more ornamented decor and fashion. And if we're feeling overstimulated, we're going to be searching out more minimalism. But it was just interesting that minimalism has been sort of the default darling aesthetic of the art world for quite a long time now. And now maximalism is having a comeback. And I think some of it could be attributed to the desire to get off of our phone and live life. If we do that, we're going to need to make our lives more colorful and interesting. So that's my recommendation. If you want to make life more real, more interesting, less phone and internet reliant, less screen reliant, you're going to need some better decorations in your house and on your person. Get some nice pattern collage art up there, some loud, bold colors, and you're going to have a good time.